following program is from NET, the Public Television Network.
Sunny day, sweeping the clouds away. On my way to where the air is sweet. Can you tell me how to get to Sesame Street?
Sesame Street is easily one of the most popular kids shows of our time, and a majority of students in this classroom likely watched it growing up. Anyone would be able to recognize the iconic characters like Elmo, Cookie Monster, Big Bird, or Bert and Ernie. Currently, the show stands as one of the longest-running television programs in U.S. history. With over 4,500 episodes aired in the past 50 years, Sesame Street's longevity comes from its ability to combine education and entertainment. But only a few people today are aware of the initial reasons behind the show's creation.
Allow me to set the scene. In the 50s and 60s, the civil rights movement had taken the country by storm. United protesters under leaders like Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X had finally begun dismantling the segregation and mistreatment in our country, which ultimately led to Lyndon B. Johnson's Great Society. The Great Society was a series of programs aimed at tackling the racial injustice issues and aiding impoverished Americans. Many of these came as education reforms, like the Elementary and Secondary Education Act of 1965. This act describes its goal as raising the academic achievement level of educationally deprived children who are residents of school attendance areas with high incidence of low-income families through specially designed compensatory education programs. The majority of educationally deprived kids relying on these reforms were Black city children with hardworking parents. This act also created new federally funded preschools to give these children a better educational foundation.
To support the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, Lyndon B. Johnson initiated a summer program called Head Start, another way to prepare young underprivileged kids before they entered the school system. Despite the attempts of the ESEA Act and Head Start, Black children were still falling behind their school peers. When Joan Gans Cooney created a documentary on the Head Start program in Harlem, she became aware of the disadvantages these Black students were facing. She wanted to make a change. After Cooney's friend Lloyd Morissette conducted a study reporting that children between the ages of 3 and 5 were watching more than 50 hours of TV each week, he and Cooney worked to create a more accessible form of preschool education in the form of a TV show. Receiving millions of dollars of federal funding, the two began developing Sesame Street, a children's program that would actually teach children as they watched. They enlisted TV writers like John Stone, along with teachers and education specialists, in order to create an educational yet still enjoyable show for these kids.
Board, 1 + 1 = 2. You're up, sir. Wonderful, wonderful. All right, are you ready for your next question?
Beyond prioritizing educational aspects, the show creators also needed to make sure they appealed to their target audience. As they put it, the 4-year-old inner-city Black youngster. In order to grab the attention of African American children sitting at home, they needed to create a show that implemented aspects of African American culture and felt familiar to these children. They started by modeling the set of the TV show after the streets of Harlem, a predominantly Black neighborhood of New York City, which had been widely recognized as a hub of African American culture by this time. The set they constructed contained buildings almost identical to the architecture of Harlem, creating an environment within the show that felt like home to its Black viewers.
Next, the creators made sure that they were hiring Black actors for the show so the child viewers could have a show full of characters who actually looked like them. Black children desperately needed positive Black representation at this time, especially with the majority of other programs instead choosing to televise the mistreatment of African Americans. Some of the Black actors serving as primary cast members included Loretta Long and Matt Robinson. They cast Black singers as well, utilizing music to better connect with the audience. Well-known African-American figures such as Jackie Robinson, the first African-American baseball player, and Shirley Chisholm, the first African-American congresswoman, also appeared as guest stars during Sesame Street's first season, providing some recognizable faces for its viewers. With all of the ways that Sesame Street appealed to African-American culture, it was ultimately able to harness the audience of black children that it had hoped to. But Sesame Street was produced so well that it appealed to more than just the black children of America. It appealed to all children. Any parent was able to see the show's educational value, and as a result, about 7 million children were watching the show daily during its first season.
The show's initial success has remained true to this day, and it has acted as a key part of education for many generations and children of all different backgrounds. Studies have proven that kids who watch Sesame Street as a means of learning at a preschool level had much more success when they reached elementary school. Understanding its reach and power, the show has also continued making an effort to bring awareness to real issues like it always has. On top of the racial diversity it has always possessed, Sesame Street has added characters to address other social issues. In 2015, Sesame Street introduced Julia, a character with autism, helping to represent and teach about young children on the autism spectrum. In 2019, the show introduced a character whose mother was struggling with addiction, with its ability to educate while also representing marginalized members of society. It is clear that Sesame Street will be sticking around for a long time.